Welcome to the Authority File. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. For this series, my guests and I have been examining the path to open access, open science, and transformative agreements from the perspective of a publisher, Springer Nature. Actually, the word transformative is no joke. Making the shift to open access has had a major impact up and down the content supply chain, from research to production and editing, distribution technology, sales, and of course, libraries and end users. In this series, we'll be getting some valuable insight into how Springer Nature began its journey to support open access and open science, the important lessons learned, the milestones along the way, and how this mission is changing the way we interact with scholarly content in profound ways. Joining me for this discussion will be Caroline Nevison, Director of Commercial Transition to OA at Springer Nature, and Dr. Ritu Dand, Vice President Editorial Nature Journals at Springer Nature. In this third episode of this series, which is sponsored by Springer Nature, we discuss pilot projects Springer Nature is developing to reduce its APCs, how that affects its editorial model, and a Netherlands-based case study that illustrates the impact of transformative agreements. Okay, so Dr. Dand, you've been examining pilot projects to reduce the APC model, correct? I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and what perhaps you've learned from the initial fee for APCs, and how perhaps the pilot would impact the editorial model and how much lower this might bring the APC.
Yes, Bill. I feel like a stuck record, but open access publishing relies on fees being generated by publishing individual papers. And, if you think of a business that has run on site license agreements, and you might have a few hundred site license agreements, and now you have to run a business based on thousands, literally thousands of small transactions. It's a completely different world. And in this world, the more papers that you publish, the higher the revenues generated. And this is difficult for publishers that are selective and publish a low volume of papers, because they're trying to find something extra special to filter for the reader, to provide the must-know research. And Nature's APC, when you hear it, is quite high when compared to most publishers, 9.5K. As I said, we have been publishing OA this year, and there hasn't been a resistance. And, authors that don't have a mandate have published OA, open access, with us and pay the fees. But it's still important to us to explore options to try and lower that fee. We want to support all our authors to be able to publish open access, and that's why we've been looking at other options. So the trial that I'm going to talk to you about today is called the Guided Open Access Trial. And it's a publishing option that's being trialed to any researcher that submits to either Nature Physics, Nature Methods, or Nature Genetics. So when an author submits to any one of these journals, they can opt in to the guided OA trial if they want to be published open access. But they also have to agree to have their paper considered at two other journals. One is Nature Communications, and the other one is either Communications Biology or Communications Physics, whichever one's the most appropriate. If the author agrees, the paper will be peer-reviewed as per normal. And with the support of the reviewer reports, we'll make a clear recommendation for which of those journals is happy to receive a revision. And more so, we will tell you exactly how much you need to do in terms of the extra experimental evidence that you need to provide for each of those journals, because they will have different criteria. Recommendation comes in the form of an editorial assessment report. So this is, again, something that we haven't done before, and it's to give the author a very structured, easy to navigate way to receive their decision. And this report contains the guidance on how to navigate the review reports. There's detailed comments on exactly what is needed and what isn't needed. And it also provides an open research evaluation and guidance for adhering to best reproducibility practice. And via this route, the researcher will have to pay a reduced APC of €2,190 for this service. But if the author chooses to follow our recommendation and continue to publication in one of the journals, then this fee will actually contribute to the full cost of publishing OA, and they'll only have to pay a top-up fee via this route. So using guided OA, an author can publish at the research journal at nearly half the price, which is pretty phenomenal. And the total fee would be €4,790. However, if an author chooses not to follow our recommendation, they're free to send their revision to any other journal of their choice. And we are happy to work with another publisher to release our confidential review reports to them. It's a fairly new idea. We have a number of submissions working their way through the system, and we've already had the pleasure of publishing a couple of editorial assessment reports. We've been surveying and interviewing the authors that have engaged with the trial, and most of them agree that it has saved them a lot of time and given them options they wouldn't normally have after one round of peer review. And this trial will run to the end of the year.
Okay. Just a quick follow on that. So can you help me understand how the economics work for Springer Nature Journal? Like, so how does it help you to split sort of the review process across, say, 3 different journals? How does that make it more economical for you to be able to offer the lower fees, I guess is what I'm asking.
Normally, every single journal works separately and independently.
Okay.
We do have an option for authors to where we will go and discuss the paper with another journal if it's going to be rejected. But it's a discussion, and we might say this journal doesn't want to publish this paper, but this journal is prepared to have a look. Send it. So it's very sort of a disparate process and not streamlined, not efficient. Here, all 3 editors come together at exactly the same time. They read the paper at the same time. So at that level, we do have a redundancy in play that whereas one editor would have read it and then the author decides where they want to go, now all 3 have to read it so there is a redundancy on our side. But whereas only a 10% chance of publishing the paper at the research journal, we now have a much larger chance proportion of papers that can be published at one of the journals. And as I started this discussion, open access publishing is about increasing the volume. And while we're not prepared to sort of curtail the selection procedure and what we want to publish on the research journals, and we want to remain selective, we want to remain having a high filter, being able to publish the paper at another journal is actually part of our bigger pot of revenue. And so that's how this process works.
Got it. So you're basically centralizing some of the functions there. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So just kind of taking our look a little bit higher level, as these transformative agreements are being struck, and Caroline, I'll jump over to you for this question. Why is it important, or how is it important to keep pricing, to the extent that you can, transparent? in what sense is the market in general obligated to keep these economics, transparent?
With regards to transformative journals, transparency is definitely a major requirement from planners. And of course, it's key for us as well as we head into this space where revenues are based around publishing behavior, rather than holdings and traditional subscriptions. It's important that we have that strong link there between publishing numbers, article numbers, and costs for an institution. So we have committed all our transformative journals to the pricing transparency requirements of Plan S. These cover both APC pricing transparency as well as subscription pricing transparency. So we've always had publicly stated models around that in terms of how we look at pricing in hybrid journals, and how that relates to the volume of subscription content. But I guess this just takes it a step further. We'll be submitting our official reports in the format given by Plan S. I think the first is due next summer 22. Yeah, it's certainly no mean feat for a portfolio of this size, but it's something really important to right. us and the industry.
Okay. And Dr. Dan, does that trickle down to the author level, that transparency, the importance of transparency, or not so
yeah,
much?
I mean, as Caroline has said, that we have committed to be transparent as according to the agreement. And as I've said before, the Nature Journal's APC is quite high, and the reason is we publish low volumes of research papers. In one of our journals, we'll publish 120 papers a year, a research journal, which is very low. But we receive thousands of submissions at any one of these journals that only publishes 100. And all of them have to be read, which is also very time consuming. And again, happens behind the scenes. We only send 20% of papers for external peer review. And we spend a lot of time looking for the best experts that can support the author. And at the end of all this, we only publish around 10% of the papers. That's all anyone sees. They don't see the thousands of papers that we've read, we've reviewed, but they're not actually published. And this is what's not being recognized by the community. In addition, the nature journals carry the burden of administrating the peer review process, and this takes a lot of time and effort. Yes, reviewers are academics and they are a part of that process, but 3 reviewers rarely agree on how to take a paper forward, and that burden of the review process is on the editor to navigate the reports and advise the authors on what will and what will not be required, as well as advise on how to make the research open along the way, which we've been discussing through these podcasts. And to do all of this, we, on the Nature Journals, employ over 360 editors, editorial assistants, journalists, artists, production staff. They include copy editors, platform people, web services, and all of these people peer review, generate news, and take research papers through to publication. Full-time editors dedicate all their time to supporting the authors through peer review. They don't have anything else to do. That is their day job. They have no personal conflicts in terms of the research because they don't do any of their own. Their job is strictly to work with the authors, to provide a service, and to see that paper through to publication. But these staff require salaries and an infrastructure to support them. We need HR, we need IT, we need legal services, and all of these costs need to be considered. And as well as, the sort of the people power that makes this work, we've also invested in many community initiatives to make our research more open. So as I have alluded to before, We work with Research Square to provide the in-review preprint facility for all our researchers. We work with CodeOcean to provide a platform for review and storage of code. We worked with ResearchGate and given the community access to our papers. We're a member of and we support ORCID by mandating all corresponding authors of our papers have an ID. We've invested in other researcher services to support our authors with open data, as well as community initiatives which support open science, like the Center for Open Science. And all of this costs, for seeing very, very little at the end. And this is the transparency behind the APC that we are making visible.
Right. Good. Excellent. So Caroline, back to you real quick. There's, I think, a case study based in the Netherlands that might provide a helpful overview for us on the impact of transformative agreements. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. Rita's obviously talked about a lot of external partnerships that we have to push forward open science, and one key set of partners that we have are the libraries and the consortia that we are working with on the transformative agreements as well. So our first transformative agreement was in the Netherlands. As you mentioned, it began in 2015. And so by the time that we were discussing the renewal ready for 2018, we thought, we've already got some experience behind us. And we knew that we were going to have several more years of publishing data that we would be able to analyze in the coming years. And the VSNU, which is the Association of Universities in the Netherlands, they're an organization that's really dedicated to data-driven research into the university and research sector. Done some fantastic projects, and they wanted to collaborate with us on a study. So we decided to embark on a project looking, as you say, into the impact of open access publishing in the Netherlands, based on the data, the articles that we published under a transformative agreement. And in particular, we're also looking at the link between open access publishing and research in some of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals to explore the societal impact that open research can have. And you can imagine where that starts to get really exciting. So we were fortunate because not only did we have the partnership between ourselves, but we were also able to partner with Digital Science and the product dimensions to help with the data crunching and the AI required to do that. And for those that are familiar, as a result of this project, a new filter was created in Dimensions for all to use, which allows to filter by relevance to the SDGs. So a really nice outcome. I definitely urge you to take a look at this study. I guess you can probably use your favorite search engine to look up Springer Nature VSNU impact. You'll probably get there. And this year it won a LIBA 2021 award for library innovation. So it not only looks at the impact of publishing open access, the impact of transformative agreements, but it also includes guidance for all authors on how to maximize the societal impact of their paper. So yeah, I think that's one super example, as well as, that being something regionally specific. We've done other studies that look at the impact of open access publication on citations, on altmetrics, and, they do, of course, show that open access is very likely to see a paper that has significant increase in downloads, citations, policy mentions. So I would say studies such as this, partnering beyond a pure agreement, are really essential.
You just heard from Caroline Nevison, Director of Commercial Transition to OA at Springer Nature, and Dr. Ritu Dand, Vice President, Editorial, Nature Journals at Springer Nature. Springer Nature is the sponsor of this 4-part series of the Authority File. Join us next week when we talk about how researchers and librarians are working through the transitions post-agreement, how OA is continuing to impact subscription content, and the broader implications of open science for our society.
The general public were able to engage with researchers in real time in a way that they'd never been able to before. Researchers became the celebrity, which I never thought I'd see. This was the open science dream. This is the reason we all want to support open science. And the question now is, how much of that will remain?
If you like what you hear, rate us or give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media assistant, Sabrina Kofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.